A couple of things that we want to keep in mind is, first of all, be sure that you know this is the plant you want to control. Choose the right. It's harvested at the peak stage of maturity. And there are some tips that we may want to consider in harvesting.
Hello, I'm Ray Campbell, your former host for Oklahoma Gardening. I've been retired actually from OSU for several years now, but still have really enjoyed my involvement with the Oklahoma Botanical Garden, working as an ambassador, and of course trying to keep my own garden together. And you know, like many of you gardeners, in fact most of you gardeners, the last few years have really been a challenge for us. So the hot, dry summers we've had the last couple of years, and then the extreme cold spring we had this year, coupled with all the storms and the rain we've had recently, have really been a challenge. So it's always interesting to see how the garden evolves each day, because one thing I've learned is that the plants catch up a lot faster than we as gardeners can catch up. And so we have to really stay on top of what we're doing. This year, because I did lose a number of my strawberries the last couple of years, I planted a small new planting of strawberries. And when I planted those strawberries, I wanted to give them a chance to really get established. So I had my soil tested, and the soil test revealed that I really did not need any added phosphorus or potassium, just some nitrogen. And so, but just to give them a little bit of boost, when I planted the strawberries, I worked in some good compost, some bone meal and blood meal, just to give them a jump start. But now that we're getting into the summer and the days are getting longer, we know that it's time for runner production on these strawberries. So I want to come in and give them a little shot of nitrogen just to help out that runner production. So I will go in and just give about a tablespoon of a nitrogen fertilizer around each plant. And then I'm thinking probably in a few days we'll really see them taking off, and that runner production will start. These are a couple of new varieties. I planted Cardinal, which is a pretty much standard variety, and then on the other side of my garden I planted Blakemore, which is a real heritage variety, if you will, an older variety. In fact, my dad was a big strawberry grower when I was growing up in southeast Oklahoma, and Blakemore was his chief strawberry, and I just loved it. In fact, we call strawberries our mortgage lifter in the garden. And then as we go on down here, I had some earlier strawberries this year also that were the early glow strawberry. And these have already finished producing, and you can see they're already beginning to produce runners a little bit. And so I will come in now, and I've already thinned these out. I'll come in now and give them a little bit of fertilizer too, just to promote some runner production. And then over in my other part of the garden, I have either some later strawberries. Now these strawberries here are a later variety of strawberry, as I mentioned. This is Sure Crop, and so what I have an early variety, a mid-season variety, and a late variety of strawberries. So I can have strawberries that usually start bearing in late April, early May, depending on the season, and lasting well through June. And on these strawberries, as you can see, I still have some fruit on there. Some really pretty nice fruit, as a matter of fact. But I will wait until I get through harvesting these strawberries, and then I will come in and thin those out to about 8 to 10 or 12 inches apart on the mother plants, give them a shot of nitrogen, and also that will encourage, of course, runner production. So it's very important at this time of the year, if you have strawberries, that you give them that seasonal care to promote runner production. Some people have asked me this year about their strawberries because their production wasn't really very good. And my thought on that is that strawberries initiate their flower buds in the late summer and early fall, usually in late August and early September. We'll have that flower bud initiated in the plant for this year. And last year, if you remember, our September and August was so hot and so dry that the strawberry really was not able to initiate a lot of flower buds. So if your strawberries were kind of low in production this year, that could be a reason, which is another good reason to give them some extra care this year. Keep them watered very well, promote that runner production for the daughter plants, and they certainly will give you a good crop of strawberries the next year then. Well, those of you who know me as a gardener really know that tomato is probably my favorite garden plant. In fact, I often call it the queen of the garden. And oftentimes people ask me questions and advice and suggestions about their tomatoes. And I have some of my friends that say, well, you know, I bought a tomato plant, it was a really nice plant, and it already had a little tomato on it. And many times we want to do that because that little tomato gives us sort of a sense of having an early harvest. But I want to kind of show you what maybe sometimes maybe the downfall of that. If you look at this little tomato plant here, and this little tomato plant here, and another one even on the end, you can see that these plants have some tomatoes that are pretty good size on them already. They actually had tomatoes on them when I set them out. And what happens is these tomatoes are still very, very small as a plant. The tomato puts all of its energy in trying to produce that fruit. Had I picked those tomatoes off and thrown them away, then this plant would probably be this high now, much like some of the others in the garden that did not have small fruit on them. So my suggestion is if you buy a tomato plant and it has a little fruit on it, it's hard to do that, but the best thing is to just clip that fruit off, plant your plant, and let the plant grow. But now that we do have the fruit on here, like my strawberries, I'll go ahead, if this fruit is this size, and put a little bit of nitrogen, ammonium nitrate is what I like to use, around those strawberry plants. I'll work it into my mulch. I've got a nice soaker hose underneath this mulch too, and I'll water those good, and this will promote vegetative growth on that tomato plant, and it will be a nice tomato plant. Over here in the garden, we have another one that did not have fruit on it, and you can see already that it is really a nice plant because these plants were all about the same size. They were all planted at the same time, but yet we can see over here and over here the difference in the size of those tomatoes simply because they did not have fruit on them when we planted them, and these over here had fruit on them at that time. So, you know, my tip to you gardeners is that know your plants, look at your plants, kind of understand your plants. And plants are like people. You know, they respond to good care and to good love, and to certainly a really good return for you as a gardener will be taking care of your plant materials, particularly at this time of the year. So I want to thank you very much for watching Oklahoma Gardening. It's a great show. I really enjoy working with the people at the Botanical Gardens, and best wishes for you and your garden this year.